Hello, viewers. I hope you're doing great. I'm Pooja Bothra, Senior Content Lead at ETHR World, and I'm back with another episode of We Talk Talent series. Today, with us, we have a very special guest. Please join me in welcoming Amarpreet Kaur Ahuja. She's the India HR Director at AstraZeneca Pharma India. Welcome to this show, Amarpreet. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you so much for having me on this show.
So, those who have been following us are aware that each week we interview a senior leader from the industry to be the best at what we love doing, bringing to the industry stories of the industry, from the industry, on the theme evolving trends in talent management space. Amarpreet, you come from an industry which is seeing major disruption. One is that we have legacy players, and then also we have these agile, new age startups changing the way businesses happen, as well as penetration of market is concerned. Digitalization is playing a key role. So, from you, we would like to know about disruptions in your industry and what kind of transformations are you doing to keep pace with that.
Thank you, Pooja. I think it's absolutely a very relevant and an interesting subject that you are approaching upon. And you're right in saying there definitely is, whether we call it pre-pandemic or in the space of being, within the pandemic, there is definitely an element of disruption. There's definitely an element of transformation, which is resulting, as a result of that disruption, I would say. And you also very rightly pointed out that it is that era of digitalization. Now, if I take the context of my current space or the organization or the industry that I'm representing, which is, from a biopharmaceuticals standpoint, a very, very important shift which is happening in the overall mindset, I would say, in a patient's journey itself is resulting into this entire transformation. So let's take a simple example that, when we talk about an element of just talking about a pill or giving a pill to a patient, it's no longer just that. It's about an entire journey, a transformation journey that even a patient today is a very active participant, if you can call it, within your entire ecosystem. The entire ecosystem of healthcare that we're talking about today gets touched upon by a very alive, a very active patient in the entire journey. So the entire solution today gets co-created in a manner that you're talking about the whole health system, you're talking about the entire fitness system, you're talking about that entire journey, the kind of devices we talk about today, the kind of data that gets captured, for all the patients and for their entire journey. So you don't talk about a very reactive approach that, okay, today I have a problem and I approach a doctor and I, find a solution around it. But you talk about a complete experience journey of a patient. And all of that today is possible due to this digitization, due to that space wherein you're able to track the data and you're able to track that entire experience in a very, very healthy manner. So I would say a lot of innovation happening in this space, a lot of, new offerings and a new digitized way of functioning and dealing with the entire healthcare system, which is currently happening and is transforming the way even a healthcare practitioner is talking. A technology, a medical leader is talking, a patient advocate as a role which is talking. There are lots and lots of elements of transformation that are actually happening in the industry that I sort of represent.
Interesting, Amarpreet, and very vividly you've explained us the innovation. Now the question is that how and where are you finding talent to keep up with that innovation, because it's a very limited pool. And with your industry doing very well, in the sense it's growing, everybody wants a slice of the same talent. So what is your strategy out there?
Quite an interesting challenge, as you pose that question itself, it's absolutely a challenge out there. There is definitely, I would say, a dearth of talent that you're looking at, because when you're crafting out these new roles, these new age elements that you're looking at, we slightly have to shift our strategy. When I say shift the strategy, in terms of looking for people with some element of competencies rather than just looking for people with some roles, I would say. Because what happens at the end of the day is while the industry is evolving, so are people. When your profiles that they're currently holding, the career journeys that they're currently holding, even that's going through an element of transformation. So as a leader in the industry, when we look out for talent, you scout for talent, we have to make sure somewhere that you're able to identify the right element of competencies, the right element of capabilities, and assess that first, and then see if they can fit into the needs, to the requirements, to the newly crafted roles, and these elements that you're looking at. So as an example, let me share a couple of thoughts with you. As an example, we could talk about obviously looking at talent with the learning agility as an example. If they are agile to learn, to upskill, to reskill themselves as and when the changes happen, as and when there is digital transformation which is happening, are they digitally savvy? Are they not averse to technology, as an example? Because again, within the pharma space or within the space, you will find senior medical practitioners, but are they digitally savvy? That's an element you have to really look at. Are they able to thrive in ambiguous spaces? Are they resilient in their ways of working? And thanks to pandemic, this is something which is coming up on topping the charts. Are they resilient? Are we able to find people who can collaborate and also at the same time be creative to come up with innovations? So the whole series of competencies or elements that we have to look at, and then match that with the kind of talent roles or profiles that we're looking at. So to answer your question also in that manner, that you have to tweak your strategy in such a way that you look for certain capabilities and then find whether they can adapt to these newer elements or these newer roles, and find the right kind of talent according to that space. So that's something that we're trying to embrace within the larger space of looking out into the candidate pool, find people who can be agile and have the ability to learn and upskill, and then actually offer them the roles that you can. So that's a little bit of a mantra, I would say, to find the right talent in the market.
Exactly. And it's a hard journey out there.
It is.
So to that point, what do you rely on, building talent or buying talent? You've mentioned a few skills like agility, resilience, adaptability. So do you have a robust learning strategy wherein your current workforce is owning those skills, or you rely more on buying talent?
I think there has to be a clear balance somewhere, Pooja. We very recently had done a detailed evaluation of our build versus the buy strategy, and of course looked at the 4B model completely, in terms of what are the elements of the bot as well, what are the elements of, the other pieces. All of those pieces are very, very clearly getting crafted out within the talent strategy. And when we talk about that, there is definitely a need to have the balance. While I can have a very clear talent strategy or upskilling and making sure that the talent is fungible, is having that adaptability and that mindset to look at newer areas, newer elements as one side. So the investment in that learning agility, or that investment in that high potential talent, is absolutely something that we work on and we focus on, because we do want to make sure that the internal talent is given the right opportunities. There is that right element of the platforms which are available, and that the frameworks which are available to upskill and find them their next roles, next career opportunities. But at the same time, I'm also a believer of the fact that there has to be time and again some injection of the external talent that has to be fed into the system, to bring some fresh ideas, to bring some element of fresh innovation that has to be there, challenge the status quo, look at those newer ways of transformation and the ways of working. So there's definitely a need for us to see the right balance between the two elements, is the way to look at it, I would say.
Very interesting, Amarpreet. From the time the pandemic hit us, since yours come under essential services, your workforce must have been on their toes, and we've seen what kind of requirement the market has had for your business. So what is your strategy to make sure that employees do not get burnt out, What kind of wellness strategy do you have in place for your workforce?
So again, a very relevant one, in the current construct, from when we look at the broader employee engagement pieces, you're very right in saying that there has been a little bit of a shift, in the overall manner in which the engagement happens, and well-being is a very, very strong pillar in that entire piece of, when we say engagement and talent engagement in its overarching context. When we talk about well-being, we have very clearly crafted out some 3 or 4 interesting segments within it. We run a very interesting campaign within the organization across the country, by the way, which caters to your technology folks, it caters to your doctors, it caters to your physicians, it caters to your operators in the factory, and just about anybody and everybody. So it's a very interesting campaign that we run under the well-being or the wellness umbrella, and it's called Celebrating You. When we say that, what that means is there are clearly called out 3 to 4 different pillars, because the need or the what would strike a chord with you may not necessarily strike a chord with me. As an example, my well-being could be a lot to do with my physical fitness, and your well-being could be a lot to do with reading a book, as an example. So the idea here is that, can I get and touch that chord for anybody and everybody? And you find that corner for yourself as to what interests or excites you the most. We've crafted out is somewhere, going into that zone or in that space whereby you're looking at clearly crafting out that there's something in it for everybody, in some form and shape. And when you say that, there are these pillars which talk about, let's say, your physical well-being. So there are lots of fitness elements that happen in it, starting from your yoga to your Zumbas and all of that. There's an element of mental well-being, which again is a separate segment altogether, or how do you find that right mental space or the mind space for yourself. There's a section on social well-being as to how networking helps people and how would they like to interact or create those informal coffee chats and a social well-being space. The last element, again, and something that I'm always a big fan of, and which is why it gets injected into all our pieces, is the learning space, and building the curiosity in people. How do you continue to ignite that curiosity and get onto book clubs, or get onto a reading space, or get onto a storytelling space, and create curiosity about a new topic, a new discussion, and things like that. So, under the larger well-being space, I would say we've built these 4 different pillars, and that in some form and shape is always, exciting a certain portion of your audience, and that engagement keeps, sort of building on and on. So that's something that we look at following up here.
I understand. And, today it is more about personalizing wellness, and one size does not fit all. So, when you talk about a wide variety, then, definitely everybody would have something that would interest them. And my last question to you, Amarpreet, is that, employer branding also has become a very, very front running strategy for HR, so as to say, and for the organization. So what is the most important pillar, or what is the foundation of your employer branding strategy?
From a broader construct, I would say one of a very strong foundation, in terms of our employer branding space, is an element of inclusion and diversity that I'd like to talk about. It's a very, very strong strategic and a global pillar within AstraZeneca as to what makes it a great place to work. And of course, being certified as an organization in India alone for the last 4 years now, we've been certified as a great place to work. And one of our key pillars and elements is to attract the right kind of talent. Make sure that there are these very, very important strategic imperatives that we have within the inclusion and diversity agenda, and something that we call inclusion and diversity in AstraZeneca, and not DNI the way it's normally called out in the industry. Because for us, diversity is stats, but inclusion is all about making sure that you're embedding the right kind of behaviors within your system and building the right kind of culture within your system. So, from that perspective, very, very clear strategy in terms of what's the diverse talent pipeline we want to build in our system. What is the kind of looking at the inclusive leadership behaviors within the organization, and how do you lastly try building the diversity of thought from an innovation perspective. So some of these pieces are very, very clearly crafted out in our inclusion and diversity strategy, and something that beautifully links into our employer branding space. Because yet again, to just give you another stat is that as an organization, again, 3 or 4 years in the running, we've been amongst one of the top 100 companies for working women in India. And, a survey and a space that's run by Avtar and the Working Mothers group together, we've been listing, and year on year, there is an improvement, not just in the ranking of where we stand, but it clearly, puts it at the top of their charts in terms of being exemplars of inclusion, in terms of being recognized for hiring women in the country. So from all those pieces, our broader employer brand, or the EVP as you call it, is in the space of inclusion and diversity as one very, very important aspect. Of course, there are others and more, but I just wanted to really call out on this one particularly.
And Amarpreet, with that, for me, you've hit the bullseye, because the recent studies and talking to some of the thought leaders, apparently having diverse workforce, having diverse people with diverse minds, with all kind of diversity, demographic, economic group, ages, gender, all kind of diversity, and having an inclusive culture is the only way in which organization can sustain growth, profitability, and a great culture. With that, we've come to an end of this session. Viewers, I hope you enjoyed the session as much as I enjoyed talking to Amarpreet. It was really great having her for this show. Stay tuned for the next session next week.